When Jasmine, a black woman holding U.S. citizenship living in America, returned from a trip to Asia, she faced prejudice at the airport customs checkpoint due to a T-shirt made in South Africa. A confrontation with a customs officer escalates into a physical altercation until President Trump intervenes, condemning the officer's behavior and defending Jasmine. What has happened? Let's delve deeper into the matter. Before diving into the main content of the video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to receive updates on the latest videos from our channel. Leave your comments to give us feedback on the content and any other topics you're interested in. Your support means a lot to us. Have a great day. My name is Jasmine, and I am a black woman living in America. My story is one of struggle, determination, and resilience in the face of racism and discrimination. I was born and raised in the United States, and I have always been proud to call myself an American citizen. But as a black woman, life in America has not always been easy for me. It was a beautiful summer day when I returned to the United States after a trip to Asia. I was excited to be back home and see my friends and family. As I made my way through the airport, I couldn't help but feel a sense of comfort and familiarity. That all changed when I reached the customs checkpoint. I was dressed comfortably in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt, but the t-shirt I was wearing had a powerful message printed on it: "Made in South Africa." I had purchased the shirt during my trip, and I loved the way it showcased my connection to Africa, a place I had always been proud of. Little did I know, this shirt would cause me more trouble than I could have ever imagined. As I handed my passport to the customs employee, she looked at me with a hint of surprise. However, what came next was something I was not prepared for. The woman, who was a white middle-aged woman, looked at my shirt and asked me in a sarcastic voice, "Honey, where did you get this shirt? Could you get me one?" Her tone was dripping with condescension and prejudice. I could feel her judgmental eyes scanning me from head to toe. I felt a surge of anger and frustration building up inside of me. Before I could even think, the words came out of my mouth. "I bought it in South Africa. What's it to you?" The woman's face turned into an ugly scowl, and she replied with a smirk, "So you are not even wearing something made in America? You are just a black woman trying to act like an African." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All my life I had faced racial slurs and snide comments, but this one felt different. It was like a direct attack on my identity and my pride. Without thinking twice, I answered back, "I am a black woman, and my identity is not defined by where my clothes are made." The woman's eyes widened, but she remained unbothered. She pointed towards a sign that said, "Customs and Border Protection reserves the right to refuse entry to any individual." I could feel the injustice and discrimination seeping into my bones. But she wasn't satisfied with my answer. She continued to mock me, saying that I should be proud to be an American and not wearing something from a third world country. I realized that she was not going to let me go without a fight. I could feel a surge of adrenaline coursing through my veins as I stood up to defend myself. The heated argument escalated, and we ended up physically fighting. It was a moment of pure chaos as we wrestled with each other, knocking down security barriers. We were rolling on the floor, pulling each other's hair and scratching each other's faces. Suddenly, there's a commotion behind me, and I'm being pulled away from the customs officer. As I turn to see who it is, I am shocked and surprised to see none other than President Trump and his bodyguard. Trump quickly walked over to us and forcefully pulled the customs officer off of me. He then turned to her and shouted, "What the hell do you think you're doing? You are a representative of this country, and you should know better than to engage in such blatantly racist behavior. I will not tolerate this kind of behavior from anyone, especially not from a government employee." His words were like a slap in the face for the customs officer, and she quickly backed away, looking ashamed. Trump then turned to me, and with a concerned expression asked if I was okay. I could barely believe what was happening. The President of the United States was standing in front of me, defending me from racism. I nodded, still in shock, and thanked Trump for his help. He then turned to the crowd that had gathered around us and addressed them. "Let this be a lesson to everyone. We are all Americans first, and no one has the right to judge or discriminate against anyone based on their race, religion, or nationality." With that, Trump walked away, leaving behind a stunned crowd and a shaken customs officer. I was still in shock, but I couldn't help but feel grateful to him for standing up for me. It was a moment that I would never forget, and one that strengthened my belief in the American spirit of unity and equality. As we left the airport, Trump and his bodyguard escorted me to my car, making sure I was safe. Along the way, we engaged in conversation, and I couldn't resist sharing my experience of growing up as a Black woman in America. From a very young age, I was aware of the color of my skin and the negative connotations that came with it. My parents, who were both hardworking and determined individuals, raised me to be proud of my heritage and to never let anyone make me feel inferior because of my race. They themselves had faced countless instances of discrimination in their lives, and they wanted to prepare me for the harsh realities of the world. As I started elementary school, I quickly realized that I was one of the few Black students in my class. Most of my classmates were white, and I was often the target of hurtful comments and teasing. I distinctly remember one day, during recess, when a group of boys told me that I couldn't play with them because my skin was too dark. I was only 6 years old at the time, but I remember feeling confused and hurt by their words. It was the first time I experienced racism, and it left a lasting impact on me. As I progressed through the school system, I faced more and more instances of racism, both subtle and overt. I remember being denied opportunities because of my race, or being told that I was articulate for a Black girl. At the time, I didn't fully understand the implications of these statements, but as I got older, I began to recognize the underlying racism and discrimination behind them. In high school, I became more aware of the prevalent racial divides in our society. I was one of the few Black students in advanced classes, and I often felt like I had to work twice as hard as my white classmates to prove my intelligence and capabilities. I saw firsthand how much easier it was for my white peers to receive recognition and opportunities simply because of the color of their skin. Despite these challenges, I was determined to succeed and prove to everyone that being Black did not make me any less capable or deserving. I threw myself into my studies and extracurricular activities, determined to make the most of every opportunity that came my way. But even as I excelled in school and received accolades, I couldn't escape the racism and discrimination that existed in the world. When I was preparing for college, I faced skepticism from some of my teachers and guidance counselors who questioned if I would be able to handle the workload or fit in at a predominantly white university. Despite their doubts, I was accepted into my top choice university, and I was determined to prove them wrong. College was a turning point for me. I was finally surrounded by a community of diverse individuals, and I was able to embrace my identity as a Black woman without feeling like I had to constantly prove myself. I became involved in various social justice initiatives and advocated for the inclusion and representation of people of color on campus. Being part of a supportive community gave me the confidence and strength to speak out against racism and fight for equality. After graduating from college, I entered the workforce and quickly realized that racism was still very much prevalent in the professional world. I faced countless instances of prejudice and microaggressions, and I often felt like I had to downplay my identity in order to fit into predominantly white work environments. I saw firsthand how hard it was for people of color to advance in their careers, even when they were highly qualified and deserving. To my surprise, Trump listened attentively and even shared some stories of his own about standing up against racism. Growing up in Queens, New York, I was always taught to fight for what I believed in and to never back down from anyone. My parents instilled in me the importance of standing up for yourself and for others, no matter the consequences. Little did I know, these values would shape me into the person I am today, a fearless leader who will not tolerate racism in any shape or form. I remember when I was just a young boy, my father took me to a Brooklyn Dodgers game. I was excited to watch my favorite team play, but what I witnessed that day would change my life forever. As we were walking to our seats, I saw a group of African American fans being harassed and verbally abused by a group of white men. I couldn't believe my eyes. I tugged on my father's sleeve and asked him what was happening. He explained to me the concept of racism and how some people think they are superior just because of the color of their skin. As the game went on, I couldn't shake off the uneasiness I felt from what I had witnessed earlier. I couldn't enjoy the game knowing that those fans were being treated unfairly. That's when I made a decision. I would never let racism go unchallenged. I would use my voice and my platform to stand up against it whenever I could. Years later, as I became a successful businessman and public figure, I never forgot that promise I made to myself. I used my position to speak out against racism and discrimination in all its forms. And let me tell you, it wasn't always easy. I was met with backlash and criticism, especially when I spoke out against the Central Park 5 case. For those who don't know, the Central Park 5 were 5 young Black and Latino boys who were wrongfully convicted of rape and assault in 1989. I remember reading about their case and feeling outraged. These boys were innocent, and yet they were being vilified in the media and by the public just because of the color of their skin. I took out a full-page ad in New York newspapers calling for the death penalty for the boys. Looking back, I regret that decision and wish I had been more informed about the case. But at the time, all I knew was what the media was telling me, and it was painting a picture of guilt and danger. Despite the backlash and criticism I received, I continued to speak out about the wrongful conviction of the Central Park 5 and their mistreatment at the hands of the justice system. My vocal stance on issues of race and discrimination also extended to my business ventures. I made sure to hire diverse employees and give equal opportunities to all races. I even offered to pay the college tuition of a young Black child whose father had been killed in a car crash. I believe that my success should be used to help others, especially those who were marginalized and discriminated against. But perhaps the most challenging moment in my fight against racism came when I decided to run for president. I received a tremendous amount of support and also a lot of backlash, some of which was fueled by racism and bigotry. But I refused to let those voices silence me. I knew that by running for office, I could help make a difference and bring about real change for the better. During my campaign, I made a promise to the American people to make America great again, and that promise included creating a country where racism and discrimination were not tolerated. I fought for policies that promoted inclusivity and equality, and I was proud to see the diverse group of Americans who supported me. As I took on the role of president, I continued to use my platform to speak out against racism and discrimination. I appointed diverse leaders and worked towards creating a more equal and just society. Of course, I faced a lot of criticism and resistance, but I didn't let it deter me. I knew that my duty as a leader was to stand up for what was right, even when it was difficult. Looking back on my journey, I can proudly say that I have made a difference in fighting against racism and promoting equality. But my work is far from over. There is still much to be done, and I will continue to use my voice and my platform to advocate for a more just and equal society. Because I know that, in the end, it's not about who you are or where you come from. It's about standing up for what's right and fighting for a better tomorrow. I couldn't believe that I was having this conversation with Donald Trump. The man who was often labeled as a racist in the media was now showing a completely different side of himself. A side that was empathetic and understanding, a side that I had never seen before. I want to thank you for sharing your stories with me. It's opened my eyes to a different perspective, and I admire your strength and resilience in the face of such adversity. I was touched by his words and couldn't contain my emotions any longer. I thanked him and his bodyguard for their help and for taking the time to listen to me. That day I made a promise to myself that I would use my voice and my experiences to fight against racism and discrimination. I started speaking at events and sharing my story, hoping to inspire others to stand up for themselves and against any kind of prejudice. And I am proud to say that I have been able to make a difference in some small ways. It may not be much, but I know that every little step counts in the fight against racism and discrimination. As for that t-shirt, I still wear it proudly, reminding myself of the incident that made me so much more than just a black woman, a fighter, a survivor, and an advocate for equality and justice.